Thank you, Troy. Make sure everyone can hear me here. Welcome here today to Embracing the Ever-Changing New Normal. Now, we want to thank Troy and the Coalition for having us today. We've been speaking to them for a while, and one of the biggest components here that makes this presentation just a little bit different is we're going to focus a little bit less on some of the things you see in a lot of these return to work stuff about what procedures, what policy, what legal items, what equipment do you need. Instead, today we're really going to talk about the human element of returning to work during this pandemic. And it's really about that. We all have the human side, the employee engagement side, the well-being side, and how to navigate that while dealing with this ever-changing new normal. And we're really going to dive in, and that's really what we do here. So just know that this is going to be kind of a jam-packed session. We've got a lot of stuff we're going to get through, so stay engaged, stay involved, and make sure you use that chat box. We're happy to answer any questions at the end, kind of make sure that we're clear, that you're understanding how to use the things that we're presenting today, and we really want to make sure you get the most out of today. And so I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to have Troy move the slide forward once, and I'm going to turn it over to Joanne, who is going to just kind of introduce LEAP training and coaching here. And we'll probably want to jump off mute.
I need to turn on my mic. Yes. Good morning, everyone. So good to be here. And I know it's early, and hopefully you'll just walk out of here with all kinds of gems that will help you. LEAP Training and Coaching is a team of coaches, and we focus on professional development in companies. And our mission is to develop the company's greatest assets, their people. And we're really experts in change management, and we specialize, this team that you have today specializes in healthcare. We work in other entities. We worked in healthcare for a long, long time. I devoted the last 12 years of my career to developing leadership and teams in hospitals and health organizations. It is my pleasure to have an extremely competent team. We work together, and we produce wonderful leaders, and we take people to their next level of greatness. And at this time of COVID, it's so important that we keep that in mind, that we all have that greatness within us, and how do we capitalize on that? So let's let Dr. David Boda introduce himself.
I'm Dr. Boda, and I'm a physician, triple boarded in internal medicine, medical oncology, quality assurance and utilization review. I've been a chief medical officer of a health system. I have been a professor at the University of Nebraska and Ellis Michel Cancer Center. I have been a builder of 4 clinics from the ground up. And when I mean the ground up, I mean the bulldozer, the business plan, the architectural plans, the hiring of the people, the processes, the installing the computers, and then delivering the healthcare in 4 different locations. And one of the things that's very common to all of these endeavors is the fact that things change every day, and you have to be adaptable and be able to clearly articulate your goals and vision and be transparent to your employees and partners.
So coming back to me, my name's Ryan Boda. I'm on the right here. And I was speaking first. Just a little bit about myself. I actually started in engineering. And after a few years of working, kind of building buildings, I really found that my passion was really working and building and developing teams instead. And so I made the change, and I have my little MS after my name. Next week, I am actually receiving my master's in leadership and talent development from Drake University, so I'm very excited about that. And really, I specialize in communication dynamics and team dynamics, what really goes on in a team. And so we're really going to focus on what is that human element today, and we're really excited to do that. And I'm going to turn it over to Joanne to kind of introduce our professional expert here today to share some of her experience and stories about how she's handled some of these things.
Okay, and Troy, can we have the next slide? There we go. So we have with us today Tanya Sharp, who is president and CEO of Boone County Health Center. She is a delightful and amazingly intelligent woman that we've worked with for about 1.5 years now. And she is, Becker's Hospital Review has her listed as a rising stars of 90 healthcare leaders under 40. So it is our privilege to work with both her executive team and her 60-member clinic staff. And they've been through a lot together, and Tanya's going to bring some of that to the forefront. So Tanya, would you introduce yourself now?
Good morning, everyone. I am Tanya Sharp. I work at Boone County Health Center, and I am the CEO here. I originally started my role here as the Chief Financial Officer, and then I transitioned into the CEO role about 3 years ago. We are a critical access hospital with 25. We have 5 rural health clinics. We are the largest employer in Boone County, which is Albany, Nebraska, central Nebraska. We have been very excited about our accomplishments over the last 3 years. Actually, in 2020, we received the 5-star rating from Medicare and Medicaid. We've received the award for Best Places to Work in 2018. But I think a lot of our success is really related back to we believe in investing in our staff and giving them the tools to be successful in order to do their job.
Awesome. And we're going to have Tanya's going to be a part of coming back and creating the real world applicability of what we talk about throughout this presentation here. So she's going to be a huge resource to share with you. What does it look like in the real world? When you hear from coaches, when you hear from consultants, it's sometimes like, well, what does that even look like when you really put it into practice? And so she's going to be able to share that with you as we go here today. So Troy, I'm going to have you move to the next slide here. And we've got this slide, and I'm going to have Joanne explain it in a moment, but what I really want to start with is that we've all heard that quote, the only constant in life is change. And it is so true, and it's more true now than ever. I mean, all we're going through is this crazy, crazy time of change. So much unknown, uncertainty. And as we experience that, there's such a human side to change. And that's really what we're going to address here today, is what is that human side look like? And then how do we help navigate it as business leaders, as professionals in the workplace, really supporting our employees? And so Joanne is going to kind of explain this crazy little diagram here so you can just better understand what is this thing called crazy time.
Sure, they give me the crazy part, right? Well, the important thing here is that this is a real thing. And by the way, if your screen, if you can't see the whole slide, if you pull it down just a little bit so you see the part that says old way and new way, I had to scroll mine down a bit. Now, what we want to look at is this vertical line on the left. You see here? This whole thing is the old way we know about anything. So since we're talking about work right now, it's everything that your people know about how things worked the old way before COVID. Okay. Now, they've had to change things in the past, but probably not as dynamically as perhaps we're looking at right now with COVID. So we have this line over here, and then we have to work our way over to the new way, which is this vertical line right here. Okay. This is everything that the new way needs to be. And think about it, this new way is even still adjusting itself. This line isn't as straight up and down, as organized as we'd like it yet, but we have to get into the new way of things. Now, a great coach by the name of Matthew Kelly out of Chicago gives us this tool because he says that as we go from old to new, everything that we knew, so all of this, we do less and less and less of this until we get to over here in the new, and there's just a little bit of the old we bring with us, all right? So that makes this triangle right here. When we start from the old and going to the new, we go from just a little of the new all the way along here until we get to the whole new way. So that makes this triangle right here. Now, the most important thing on this is this diamond in the middle, okay? And he names this crazy time because literally this is mild science we're doing right now. our brains are trying to reassemble their thought processes to go from what was so comfortable, even like where their chair was, where they sat, who they saw, how far away they were from other people, and all that. Our brain stores all of that in this old way. And as we begin to adjust to how things need to look now, how we need to have meetings, perhaps all of our meetings are on Zoom right now, or if you are in a room together, there's a distancing that we're not accustomed to, and that changes our chemistry a little bit. So he calls this time crazy time, because we honestly all feel like it's a little bit crazy right now. And it doesn't mean we literally are crazy. It's that our brain is doing a lot of extra work to try to update itself, kind of like your computer when you get a new programming. It has to update itself, and we all have to get more comfortable with what the tools that we're using in this new way. And so to understand that there's nothing wrong with these people, they aren't crazy. This is crazy time. And we're going to teach you some more about this as we go along. And let's see what Dick has a little bit of an explanation of what the stress is in crazy time.
Yes, it's amazing that we don't really appreciate this. If you look at the vertical line on the left, that's what we are used to prior to COVID. We're used to every day. We come to work, things are pretty regular, reportable, expected. That's called homeostasis. Things are in the balance. And what we're going to is the right vertical line, which is the new way, the new homeostasis, the new things we will be used to. However, to get there, we have to get through this central part called crazy time. And this crazy time has a trauma to it called allostasis, which is another way to say wear and tear. The amount of stress that you take each day, the amount of stress that's constant, make changes in your body so that you produce cortisone, testosterone, and epinephrine, which activate the amygdala and hijacks the right frontal cortex, which all those fancy words means it confuses you. It makes it difficult for you to make decisions. It's hard to make lists. It's hard to stay on task. You tend to be disconnected and not engaged. So the crazy time is a time of stress. It is also a time of high hormonal excretion, which changes you. And so it's a time that we need to be very careful about wear and tear and be great about explanation and transparency.
Troy, I'm going to have you move forward into the next slide. So, when we look at this crazy time, this is the three things we're really going to focus on today that really goes on during crazy time and makes it even worse. And so the first one we're really going to cover is kind of the constant worry that people have when returning to work. And how do we address the human side of the worry, right? The second thing we're really going to focus on is this idea that there's never-ending changes. It would be beautiful if the old way on the left and the new way, right? If we were clear on what the new way was. But the problem is there's so much unknown that we really don't know what the new way looks like yet. So we're constantly moving to the new way and then readjusting. And we're stuck in crazy time so much. So how are we going to handle that? And the last thing is unclear expectations and guidelines that can really have a hindrance on how we function as employees when we're really uncertain about what's going on. And so we're going to talk about those three things today. So I'm going to have you move forward again, Troy, and we're really going to focus on this first one, which is constant worrying when returning to work. Now, a lot of research shows that even before this pandemic hit, we were at one of the highest points in history on stress levels with work and everything else going on. And now you add this pandemic in, and I just want you to sit back for a moment in your chair and just consider, what are some of the worries that my folks are dealing with, right? What are the worries that they're bringing to the environment we're here at? Could be, maybe it's job security. Maybe it's financial security, health concerns, their loved ones, their family and friends, right? It's economic stability. Could be that they have childcare duties they've never really dealt with, or schooling duties they've never really dealt with. The amount of things that we're worried about as we return to work is so wide ranging that we have to understand that each person is experiencing something different. And so what we really want to understand is that with all of this worry and doubt and fear and looking over your shoulder and distrust when it comes to your administration, your leaders, and things like that, the antidote to that distrust, to that worry, is all about trust. And Joanne's really going to speak to how she has seen that active in her work. It's all about trust, and how do you build that with your people. So Troy, you can click one forward, and Joanne, you can share a little bit about your experience.
Absolutely. So let me just say that one of the most important things we have to do, no matter how much trust we've known in the past with our people, is to understand that they don't know what to trust, who to trust. Things change. They're getting all these signals from different folks. They don't know how to trust right now. And so don't be surprised if you get this sense that there's a low trust level in your crew. And the thing is that in my work, I work to get with groups and individuals for years inside of companies. And one of the things that always comes out is that they don't trust something, someone, some system. Trust is huge, and we have to build that. Now, research tells us that crazy time has a great need for the leaders to admit to everyone, we know this is a crazy time. And that just immediately, the people start to trust that you see it and you understand that you aren't crazy. It's a crazy time we're all in. All right. And so there are specific techniques we use to build trust. And you don't have to worry that you don't have the trust from 10 years ago, or that you don't have a lot of time, because there are things you can do in the moment that puts us in the right place in our heads. It's all about what's in our heads, that we can start to trust again, and we can trust that the person has our goodwill and the goodwill of our company at in the forefront right now. And when someone will be transparent enough to honestly say to us, this is a crazy time, but we're going to get through it. We're going to learn to work together to move through it. That's what we have to do. So Dr. Dave is now going to give us a little bit on some ideas of where trust is needed.
Thank you. One of the things I read recently is a book by Dr. Perlmutter, published in 2020, so a recent book, called Brainwashed. And one of the things he pointed out in there, and in the world that we are in, and this is just before COVID, that things are in such flux that he estimates that 87% of our employees during the course of the day have periods of disengagement from work. And they believe that is secondary to stress of the environment they're in. So that allostasis, the wear and tear, is really impacting upon our employees, whether it be 87% or some other number. The American Psychological Association has recently published that there's been a 20% increase in the stress level reported by U.S. adults. That's people above the age of 18. What's interesting with COVID and the change in education, homeschooling, quarantining or staying at home, that if you have children in the house under the age of 18, your stress level has gone up 37%. So there is a general increase on that wear and tear load on people. And when the American Psychological Association said, what would you blame as the major cause for your stress, it wasn't really the kids, it wasn't really COVID, it was work, and the fact that work is no longer clear. It is in crazy time, and they're having difficulty navigating crazy time. So this is the obligation of organizations and leaders and CEOs to navigate people through this crazy time. I'll return it to Rachel.
Yeah, I'm going to let Tanya take over here for a moment. So she is going to share a little bit, and I'm not going to put any words in her mouth, but when we started with one of her teams, her clinic team there, she'll probably expand on it, but there was just a little bit of this constant worry. And this was before COVID, but that experience of what it's like for them to kind of always be looking over their shoulder, disengaged, not really trusting leadership, going over some turnover, some things like that. What really happens when you're living in that, and when you can really put some of these pieces into practice to build trust, the type of changes you see. So I'm going to turn it over to Tanya just to share a little bit about just what they've experienced and how that has affected their way of navigating COVID now based on their current relationship.
Thank you, Ryan. So I just want to give a little bit of background on how Boone County Health Center got involved with LEAP. So as I said, I've been the CEO here for 3 years. About a year and a half ago, we engaged with LEAP just to start having these conversations because it became very clear to me that there was a mistrust and distrust with leadership, especially the admin team with some of the employees. The administration, before I got here, they had been here for a very long period of time, and over time, they maybe became a little less engaged according to the employees. Not necessarily true, but that was their perception. And so the one thing that LEAP really helped me realize right at the very beginning is we have to meet these employees where they're at. You know, what perception is reality. So where our clinic was prior to LEAP, as Ryan described, there was definitely a turnover in our leadership over there. The clinic management position definitely did not stay longer than about 6 months. And it was really hard for me to understand why, and that's why I really wanted to dig into what that looked like. We have a longevity of staff, and we have longevity of providers, and that is all a great thing. However, they built on all their experiences, and then they weren't even willing to give a new leader a chance because we've already seen that happen. Oh, we know exactly what this is going to do. They're not going to be here longer than 6 months. So we found that they didn't even want to give something new a chance. There was definitely lack of communication between administration and that clinic area. So we decided to involve LEAP to help us just find out where they were at, have an unbiased party, help us analyze, but also give these employees the tools that they need in order to be successful to help us communicate with them. And when I say us, I mean the administration team, but even the board of trustees. We just couldn't understand where they were at, and we weren't getting anywhere. So LEAP came into our facility and helped really facilitate those conversations. And I will tell you, the first couple meetings, my understanding is it was pretty quiet. How's everything going? They might have got a nod or good, but we all knew that there was something a little deeper. And LEAP did a great job of building that trust with them so that they felt comfortable opening up and expressing what their concerns were and what that looked like. So after we got through that, they gave them tools in order to understand where maybe admin was making decisions. It's not that we like to make decisions, I don't come to work every day and say, you know what? I feel like I want to change this today. I really think that was their perception, but not any longer. LEAP helped them understand that we were just trying to adapt to the changes that we were up against as a healthcare organization, even before COVID. So with LEAP's help, we gave them these tools, and they also started to understand where we were at, but we also, as admin, understood where they were at. So like I said, it was important to meet them where they were, but also help them along the journey with us and make them feel a part of the team, and not as if these regulations and these policies and changes were just something they had to adapt to. We wanted them to feel like they were part of that with us. But one of the other things that was very clear to me that was identified is the follow through. When a concern or a question was brought up, making sure that you take the time to address it. Maybe that meeting that it was brought up in wasn't the most appropriate place, but just saying, you know what, I obviously know that that's very important to you. After this meeting, why don't we talk about that? And just redirecting that, and then taking the time to follow up with that employee and say, I understand that was important to you in the meeting. Let's talk about that. And depending on where their concern was, making sure to follow up with that employee and let them know what had been done with it, or if anything needed to be done about it. Maybe they just needed to voice those concerns. So that really helps with building that trust. And I will tell you that during COVID, having those tools for those employees to lean on or to use was vitally important, because when changes were being brought down the pike, they knew that that communication could be open. They understood that we would follow through with any concerns or questions that they had, or items of recommendation. I will tell you, some of the best ideas on how we adapted to change to meet the needs of our community as it related to COVID came from the employees. They thought outside the box. They had great ideas, and it was that administration was also willing to listen to those ideas.
Thank you, Tanya. Fantastic. You can see why we love letting her tell you her story, because it's such a great one. Now that if we can move to the next piece. Oh, we forgot to move to Boone County. So that's Boone County Hospital. And now can we move to the next thing? We meant to have that up while Tanya was speaking. So you've heard the statement that everything's in our head, our worrying, everything's in our head, right? Well, it's actually pretty true. We've learned through research. So we're going to very quickly just give you an overview so you can understand that distrust only lives in the amygdala, which is the worry fear center of our brain. It was designed to keep us safe. So what we know is that when people stay in distrust, that's when the problem happens. It's going to naturally occur because the way we're wired, every thought we have as we walk into a room that's all different and we don't know what to do, we start to distrust the environment. We start to distrust whoever did this to us. Now, the important thing to know is, as long as we don't stay stuck here, we're okay. What we have to do is learn how to move people to this area, the prefrontal cortex up here, is the only place that trust lives. And research has shown that when this is lit up on a CT scan or an fMRI, this is dark. They don't even have access to their prefrontal cortex. So it's actually shifts that we make as leaders to help people get into the part of the brain where they can connect with us and they can start to trust us. And there's a chemistry about it. There's all kinds of incredible things we've learned that we taught the administration and the team at Boone County. So this is a brief, quick overview because we need to move along. But understand, there's not anything wrong with the person who's in distrust. They're just stuck. It's called amygdala hijack in some of our language. And our job is to learn to move them. So we're going to give you a couple little hints as we go.
So a couple little hints here I thought was interesting. So number one, when Tanya was talking, one of the things we did with their group actually was we wrote down what qualities they were looking for in their new leader. And when that leader was put in place, we actually asked them very specifically worded questions about, things like, what are they most excited about this leader? Where do they see these qualities coming to life in this leader? And it could be something as easy as they wanted the leader to be authentic. And that's a really hard thing to measure, right? You're judging what somebody is saying. And so when you word questions a very specific way, you actually prime them to look for, where is this individual being engaging, asking questions, things like that. So that was a really powerful thing for a leader to do. The other tip that we really talk about is, now Tanya's group chose to kind of have a third party come in and look at some things. And so we kind of helped open that space there. But really, it's about the feedback loops that she has put in place. And so that leader who went in, the very first thing she set up was individual meetings with every single person. Get to know them, hear what their concerns are. And then this was really important, she followed up with them. And so right now during COVID, when we have these constant worries and doubts and fears and distrust, we need to learn as leaders, how do we effectively set up feedback loops with our employees? Because the day they step back into your office, they are going to have worries. They're going to have doubts and fears. And how do we acknowledge the crazy time? Have them understand we hear it and then move forward with it. And it's all about those feedback loops. And sometimes, like Tanya's, we need the third party case to look at it. And other times we go, how do we set this up for our people? And that is very, very important. And so I would really challenge you to figure out, how can I set up feedback loops? Now, when we look at never-ending changes, one thing I heard from Joanne the other day, she read an article, and the quote she read was something like, did you know that the future was always uncertain? We just assumed we knew what it would be. It really to the fact that change is inevitable. The future is always unpredictable, but that we actually love that status quo, that status quo, that homeostasis that Dr. Boda talked about, and that we need to actually prepare ourselves for these never-ending changes. So really, I'm going to turn over to Joanne, because when it comes to changes, no matter what it is, it could be that you guys are going back to school, and dependent on where you're located, maybe your school shuts down in 2 weeks, and oh my gosh, here comes another change. And so there's going to be constant changes, and the key is, how do we teach the skill of adaptability? And Joanne's going to talk about that.
So this fellow on the screen right here, he's balancing on some very tricky things, and then he's keeping a lot of balls in the air, isn't he? He's got to keep throwing. But this is what we're all looking like right now. I may not wear a suit and tie, but I'm on those same little uncertain platforms there. The definition of adaptability, and this is what this fellow's doing right now, is adapting to everything that's in his environment. So the definition they give in this article is, it's the capacity to cope and capitalize on change, and then to recover when unforeseen things occur. I believe that Tanya's group that we worked with, her clinic, the administration that we worked with, this is what they have really shown they are capable of doing. It's the capacity, and we opened that through all our interactions with them. And so when we capitalize on it, you'll have to hear what she did with her group, because they had learned how to deal with change earlier, and now they have this huge change, what to do. So it's much needed during this time to learn adaptability. And so Dr. Dave's going to give us some things on the why of this.
Forgot to unmute. So one of the things that's interesting about this is, my daughter-in-law is the director of health services for the largest public school in the state of Nebraska, which has approximately 60,000 students. And she just got the job in April of this year. And guess what? COVID now had the schools closed, and now they're planning to reopen. And she has spent countless hours on the phone developing plans, trying to adapt to the ever-changing information that's coming out about COVID, whether it be medical or personal or anecdotal information. The biggest thing that is clear by watching her go through this time is that she was trying to develop a new homeostasis, a new right vertical line going through this crazy time. And she had to be adaptable to changing her plans every week, almost every day. And the biggest thing that she learned and performed was the transparency of communication, the transparency of the fact that we are truly in crazy time. And we don't know exactly where we're going, but we're working hard to make the best choices, and we're working hard how to be adaptable. So I think that when you try and understand this ability to capitalize on change, that adaptability is a function of us that really needs to be nurtured and supported.
We are going to turn it over again to Tanya. Through work with her group, I know that change is something constant in healthcare, whether it be policy changes, procedure changes, legal changes, and so on. So this is something that they were experiencing, where when we talked to the clinic staff, it just feels like it's constant change. Every day is a different new policy, and they have no idea where it's coming from. And I know this was something, as they started to navigate COVID, that she felt they handled really well. And I know she's going to kind of explain why here now. So we'll turn that over to Tanya. Troy, you can move forward one.
So here at Boone County Health Center, we are not unique in the healthcare industry. As you all are aware, we're under constant changes, new regulations, new rules coming out. It just seems like we're hit from the right side to the left side with new things that are coming out. And then COVID was just another one of those changes that came down the pike. So again, LEAP really helped us have some of those tools in order to adapt to change. But I will tell you that our admin team, we made a decision. There's 5 of us on our admin team. We made the decision that as we went into COVID, we had guiding principles. And we sat there and we wrote them down, and we had the top 5. And then we decided at the end of the day, the one thing that mattered was if every decision we made, we put the patient in the center. I'm not saying our employees are not important, but we are here for our patients. And you know what? If we're keeping our patients safe, we're also keeping our staff safe. If we are able to keep the patient in the center of every decision we make, and we go back to that, are we keeping that patient in the center? We were making really good decisions, but it also resonated out to our staff because they knew that that was our guiding principle. We are here for the patient. How do we make sure that we are here? So when it came down to COVID, it was very interesting because when we were making decisions, people were scared. We didn't know what that was going to look like. There were a million changes that we were making within the organization. We were moving to have swabbing done outside. We were changing our rural health clinic to be able to do telemedicine more than ever before. There were a lot of changes, but you know what? We kept that patient in the center of every decision we made. And staff, when they looked at it through that lens, crazy things happened and crazy great things happened. So we're in crazy times, but we were able to adapt and focus on that patient. And when it came to who wanted to go work and swab people in the COVID unit, per se, they wanted to go because they wanted to keep the patient in the center, and they wanted to make sure that we were here to take care of the people in our community. And so I will tell you that there were people fearful, but then there were other people that stepped up and helped them along the way. It wasn't necessarily administration saying, well, how can we get you the help that you need in order to feel comfortable? It was another coworker really mentoring them, like, where are you at today? What can I help you with? And it was a peer-to-peer versus necessarily a leader to, a director of nursing to a nurse. The other thing that I feel like we did very well, thanks to some of the recommendations from LEAP, is I told you, meet them where they're at. Also, you need to be able to walk the walk. So I would tell you that our administration team felt very comfortable with how do we help? How do we help during this time? It's not that we're just sitting in a boardroom making decisions and just passing this along. It was more about, okay, what can I do? So during COVID, we went out to our local nursing homes and we swabbed the employees. That was one of the recommendations from the state of Nebraska. Our director of nursing, she was right alongside them in her PPE and swabbing with them. And honestly, our new VP of clinical services, she was registering those patients. So we were not afraid to be elbow to elbow with these individuals and these employees. We weren't just making decisions that we wouldn't be willing to do ourselves. And I think that spoke volumes to our staff. But the other thing that I would say that helped us along the way is don't forget to have fun and stay positive. We did have a lot of laughing moments during COVID, even though it wasn't a laughing moment opportunity. But, we wanted everybody to have their temperatures taken. And the CIO, he decided to take a picture in his PPE. And he had a candy thermometer. And he said, if you're not going to get your temperature taken, I'll have to take your temperature with this. And it was just more fun. And the way we worded our questions were more positive. Like, what went right during COVID? What's went right so far? Instead of, what went wrong? Or we always seem to focus on the negative. What went right? And so that way we make sure to do those things again. And it's interesting how it causes people to think a little bit differently.
Thank you, Tanya. So what we really find from this is when we look at, and you can go forward, Troy, when we look at LEAP and what we really preach to people is when it comes to these never-ending changes, Tanya hit it on the point, as we always say, look for the positive, look for the opportunities. And that's about one of the biggest things that we do as coaches and we preach to people is get clarity. Get clarity. And one of the things that Tanya was talking about there is they knew exactly what their goal was. This is what our goal is. We're working for the patient. So it's all about clarity. The other thing that was actually in the adaptability article was the concept of riding something like a wave. And I had just watched the Bethany Hamilton documentary, actually, and watching her surf. She was a surfer who got her arm bit off by a shark. And watching her surf, watching the way that though the wave crashes and changes, and watching them take it in a calm manner, look for each change, navigate, shift from side to side. That is how we need to handle these changes going on right now. And this picture is very important because it's actually a picture that reminded me of something I learned about a year ago that says, take a balcony look at something. Take a balcony look. And what that means is sometimes we get into the nitty gritty, the emotions, the drama, the frustration of COVID, of changes, of never ending changes. And what we need to do is get off that, what we call the dance floor, everything, the emotions, the frustration, get off that, walk up those stairs and stand on the balcony and look down. And think about the perspective you receive when you're up on those balcony looking down versus when you're in the midst of a dance floor. So really what we remind people is take a balcony look, take a deep breath, bring an outside perspective in. You know, I've even seen that some clients will have a person in a meeting that they sit back from the group and their whole role is to just take notes from the back, not have any perspective, not say anything, but just take some notes. What are they noticing about the conversation? And it allows us to open the space differently. So I want to move forward here for Troy into our very last piece here, which is on unclear expectations and guidelines. And you know, a lot of the pushback on a human perspective that we see during COVID is this concept of like, why are we making this change? Or really, again, we're doing something? Or like, I mean, for a lot of places, it's like, what the heck does that even look like? My fiance is a teacher and you know, she went back to school this week and the answer was, well, what the heck am I supposed to even be doing? Like half the stuff I'm not even clear about. And so it's really about, in this image here, it's really about two things. Number one, this image, transparency. It's really about, you know what, as leaders, we don't always have to know the answers, but we do have to admit when we don't know the answers and understand that transparency is the way that we can communicate with our employees the most effective way. You know, employees are just fed information like crazy right now from media, from social media, from companies. How do we make sure that we're not overwhelming them and we're as clear as we can be with what we're expecting? And so when we really combine that trust from the first one with transparency, we can really ease some of the challenges of COVID and returning to work. And we really need to work on that. The second part we really want to work on is compassion, which we need now more than ever, and to understand that we are humans and we need that compassion for each other, what we're going through. And that's really how we fix and we address these unclear expectations and guidelines to be able to say, we understand that this is really tough, that we're not really sure what's going on right now, but here's how we're going to go about working on it. So Troy, I'm going to have you move forward. And I really want Tanya's going to talk just a little bit about this concept of what do we do about this unclear expectation. She had even said to us that, you know, her leadership team had really done a great job of just talking through things and everyone's voice being heard and stuff. So I know she's going to talk a little bit about just how does unclear expectations and guidelines been affecting them during COVID?
Sure, thanks, Ryan. So one of the things that we implemented when COVID, we were just starting, it hadn't hit our community yet, but we knew that we needed to start to get prepared, is we met daily, the admin team met daily, and we had a very structured agenda that had 3 bullet points on there. And it was everything we talked about had to stay within those 3 bullet points because it was very easy to get off topic. And again, our values at Boone County Health Center, they were listed at the top. And remember what our guiding principle was? Keep the patient in the center. And so those things were at the top of this agenda. So that way we didn't forget why and how we were going to make these decisions. So we had these admin meetings, but before these admin meetings, there was actually a daily huddle that happened over in the clinic because they were the ones that were definitely adapting to change more than anyone else in our organization at the very beginning. And they were having daily huddles, and then any questions that the vice president of clinical services couldn't answer, she was able to say, you know, I don't know the answer to that, but we have a team here that we will work through and try to get you an answer to that question. So then she brought those questions after those daily huddles to the daily admin meeting, and then we discussed them as a team. So therefore, she wasn't put on the spot and asked to know exactly what this answer was right now. She had an avenue in order to use an entire resource of the admin team to help make a good decision, and again, use those guiding principles. So we were able to do those daily huddles, and it also allowed our clinic staff to have a voice and say, what about this? Have you thought about this? And again, we wanted to hear from these employees. We wanted to make sure that they were comfortable during this crazy time as well. So everybody was able to share their thoughts freely at the clinic huddle, but at admin, we also allowed for that. We also have a chief medical officer. We have a VP of patient services. We have quality, just like all of you. And we all have a different perspective on what should happen, how it should happen, and also where our area of expertise were. But when we put our minds together, we could accomplish anything. It was amazing to hear what everybody had to say, but everybody was respectful of everybody else's voice. And there were times that some voices were louder than others, and I will tell you that when that happened, we weren't afraid to say, hey, I really want to hear from so-and-so. Can you just hold on to your thought? And it was a very respectful conversation, and no one walked out of there upset, didn't feel like they were heard. Everybody had an opportunity to talk. So I have to say that I think our staff felt very comfortable with the decisions that were made because we also took into consideration what they had to say. The other thing that we implemented was we learned from staff very quickly that not everybody was here at Boone County Health Center, right? And we knew that as admin, but we thought we could just send an email. Well, not everybody checks their emails as frequently as, say, I do. And so again, meet these staff members where they're at. So we opened up a portal so that they could check their email in an easier fashion than before because not everybody had email on their phone as I do. And so we really needed to meet these staff members where they were at, but communication was so vitally important that they knew what they were coming into the next day because not everybody works Monday through Friday. So if they came in on Saturday, they had a way of getting that memo before they came into work so that they could be in the right frame of mind and they knew what changes had been made up until that date. Everything was very current.
Awesome. Thank you, Tanya. So Troy, you can move forward. What I just want to say for our last piece here, our last little thing that we are explaining is we teach this little tool called Look, See, Tell the Truth, Take Authentic Action. And during COVID, this is one of the most important things. And that's that we need to look at the situations that are going on. That means get rid of some of the drama, get rid of the concern. We do have to look at them. Look at the human element. And then C is about being really, really curious. Like what's really there? What Tanya was saying was there's a lot of perspective. There's a lot of input. Be curious about what's there. And then the third one says tell the truth. And that is so important because it's about what are the facts? What's really going on? Not the drama, not the concerns. What's really going on? And yes, you see this little monkey guy? Something's going to be monkeying with it. There's going to be different changes, different people's opinions and thoughts and ideas. But you know what? We're going to tell the truth about what's going on, get really, really clear about it, and then we're going to take authentic action on it. We're going to do what we need to do. We're going to distribute the information. We're going to set up the daily huddles like Tanya was talking about, bring it back to this group, and all of those things right there. So what I really want to share is that as we move forward here to the next slide, this is our last little piece that's just a little wrap up. And all of this is that, yes, crazy time occurs. We've got constant worry. We've got the never-ending change. We've got the unclear expectations. But if Troy hits it one more time, what we really want you to understand is, yes, equipment matters. Yes, safety procedures and necessary things matter. Legal things matter. But so does the human element. Building trust in the moment. Remember that. Building the skill of adaptability can be done right now amidst all of this, as well as transparency and compassion. That is all something we hold together right here. And so as we move forward, Joanne's just going to wrap up our crazy time, and we're going to move into our questions here in a moment. So Troy, you can click forward. Joanne's just going to close us here with crazy time, and then I'll have one last thing to say. Joanne's on mute, though.
Helps a lot to unmute. Otherwise, it's really crazy, isn't it? All right. Do we just want to make sure that you walk away understanding all of us are experiencing crazy time right now. And it's how we handle it. It's how we build the trust. It's how we work to understand where people are. And the next time we meet, we're actually going to give you some of the things that are actually going on inside of their heads that you can expect and understand. And that way you're not sideswiped by it. And that's what Tanya and her team had. A lot of background in that. So remember, yes, it's crazy time, and it's okay to be transparent with people to say, this is a pretty crazy time, but we're going to be in it with you. And she was a great example of that with her team, and that's why we brought her on today. And we want to thank her for being so thorough and bringing to us exactly a live experience of walking through crazy time more than once. So thank you so much, Tanya.
Thank you.
Troy, I'm going to have you move to that next slide. And just all I want you to know from this slide is very simply, it really does matter about our conversations we have with people. Build those feedback loops, communicate, talk about adaptability, and we're going to get through it together as a group. And so my last thing before we go to our questions and answers is very simple, right? That quote from the beginning. The only constant in life is change. And the truth is that organizations that really understand that and then take action on that concept by actually preparing their employees for change in the moment, right now, prepping for change, and then using the tools we've talked about today, actually navigating it with trust, adaptability, transparency, compassion. Those are the companies, those are the leaders that are going to continue to thrive, to innovate, and to prosper into the future even after we navigate through this COVID era and on. So really remember, change is the only constant in life, so we need to prepare for it to really move into the future. So Troy, we're ready for some questions, whatever you'd like.
Great. Thank you all very much for sharing both your experience and more importantly, your expertise with us. As we are in the Q&A period, again, feel free to use the chat function. As well as feel free to unmute yourself and ask any questions that you might have, both from Leap and our experts here, as well as Tanya. So as we are waiting, go ahead.
I was just going to say, well, people are waiting to see if they have a question. I just want to point out that, and ask Tanya a question. Tanya, do you see that walking through what you've done over the past year has really brought you, your clinic, your organization to a new level of greatness?
Absolutely, Joanne. I would say that it has just brought us more cohesive as a team, but also it's taken us to the next level of what else is achievable. I mean, even amongst this COVID, one thing I didn't say in my presentation is, even amongst the heat of COVID, we decided to kick off a big building project. And you know what? People couldn't have been more excited. And they weren't like, oh, another thing. It was something to look forward to. And like I said, they were like, okay, we're on to it. So I would say that we have definitely become more resilient because of the tools that we were given. And that's led us to be fantastically great.
Thank you, Tanya. Absolutely. That's when I was looking at that last slide that Ryan put up. I was just thinking of, my goodness, Boone County Medical or Health Center has really gotten to a new level of greatness through all this tumult and everything, and how rewarding that is. So thank you.
All right. We wanted to say thank you. I know that Lisa with Shawnee Mission Medical Center, or now being called for a little while now, Advent Health here in our market, had the chance to join us, and we appreciate that. Lisa had to leave, didn't have any questions, but was grateful for what we shared today. We appreciate Advent Health being a part of it with us today. Any other, if there's no other questions, we're happy to certainly give you back your time, a little bit of time, and want to encourage you to enroll for what is next week's Back to Work Town Hall, and that is on rediscovering your team chemistry and addressing what is the human element of returning to work. And we'll be very excited again to be partnering with Leap Training and Coaching, and we encourage all of you to please feel free to forward the invitation as well. And if there are no other questions, I'll check a final time here. Would like to again thank our guests and our expertise this morning with training and coaching. And Tanya, thank you very much, and all the best to you. And God bless you and your workers and their families that are truly on the front line helping us fight this pandemic as we all navigate what is truly a new normal that we're all embracing and learning to go down that path together. So thank you all again this morning for your time. We appreciate it, and we look forward to talking with you next week. Thank you very much.